Oh, my name is Brian Wayson. I've lived in North Liberty for 19 years, I think, almost. So we moved here from Coralville after we lived there for about a year when we moved down to the university where my wife and I both work. We lived in Cedar Rapids for years before that because that's where I went to college and then worked at the hospitals up there for a little bit. Well, currently I am on the Tree and Stormwater Advisory Board, and I was elected to City Council at the last election here in November, and that starts office in like the 1st of January. Several years ago, I noticed that things in North Liberty were not going exactly the way I'd like to see them going. We were getting a little big, a little too fast, and things were getting a little out of hand. And I became much more involved in things at that time, and I've kind of continued to do so, sometimes more up front and sometimes a little more behind the scenes, I guess, over the last couple of years. And as the kids have gotten a little older, I had a time where I thought I could do a good job at City Council. My philosophy for City Council is that it needs to be responsive to the citizens, and the other thing we need to do is really, there's lots of viewpoints, and try and find that middle ground for lots of folks. And I think that, and overall, that's going to make the best decisions for the city. And I think that usually if you can find a middle ground for most things, most people will be happy, and that's probably, as in all things, the truth lies somewhere in the middle, and I think that's, I'm a firm believer in that. I think that in the next 4 years we have some problems coming up. I think is going to be the budget thing. I know that everybody else talks about how the economy is getting better, but I think Iowa was lagged behind, getting worse, and will probably lag behind a little bit, getting better. I know the state's having some serious problems with things, and I think some of that's going to get kind of put off onto the city to kind of deal with. And so I think trying to keep a tight fiscal policy. At the same time, we have a lot of things that we need to add, and we've gotten so big that we're going to have to get some roads that have to be built, because otherwise we're just having a traffic nightmare. I think the library, which was one of the things that I first voted for when we moved here, and that and the rec center, I remember when the library was in the back where the police station is, now area, and I think that we really need to continue to improve that, and the rec center, make that a big focus of the community. And I think that those things are not inexpensive, and we're really going to have to toe the line on everything else to make sure we can make those things happen. I spent a great deal of my time at the University of Iowa Hospitals. I'm a nurse practitioner there in the pulmonary critical care area, and we have a 15-bed unit that I generally am responsible for. I work daytimes and don't have to work weekends, so that works pretty good. Daytime gets to be pretty long, though. Sometimes I'll start at 7 o'clock, and it might be 8 o'clock by the time I leave. I'm fortunate in the area of downsizing that I got upsized, and I actually have some more help now. I have another nurse practitioner that works with me, so it's made my life significantly better. So we kind of take turns staying late and stuff. So that helps quite a bit. But we're pretty busy, and as things kind of go along, it was pretty slow for a little bit in October, but we actually ended up having the busiest October I've had in 8 years. And as the little flu epidemic Iowa was a little behind the curve on that, but I think that's hitting us hard right now. So hospital's pretty busy. Generally deal with people who have complicated medical problems, and usually they have problems with their lungs as a part of that. So people who come out of intensive care quite a bit. The other thing I take care of is folks who've had lung transplants, people who are waiting to get lung transplants, and then adults who happen to have cystic fibrosis, which is a genetic condition. I like working with my patients. So it's nice to see them get better if they can, and some people can't get better. But you can make sure that they're well taken care of in a different manner. And I like working with the staff on the unit, the nursing staff, and I also like really working with the medical staff in my department. I think they're a lot of dedicated folks, and it's an enjoyable work experience. So my original, when I was way back in junior high, was politics. And we were on TV for some little game show that, and that the local TV station did. And that was what do you want to be when you grow up? I said, I wanted to be president. And so that stuck with me and through college. And I grew up in the middle of the 80s, so somewhat disillusioned with some of the political process and stuff. So I switched to a totally different track. And so I went to nursing school with the thought that I'd probably go to medical school. But when I got to the university and saw the horrible life that the residents had, I said, well, I'm really doing pretty good right now, and I'll just stay that way. And then as the nurse practitioner roles have expanded, I kind of fit in between there, so I get to do a lot of basic nursing, but also the expanded role of advanced practice, and I have a lot of autonomy and get to do a lot of things that the regular nurses don't get to do. Well, I'm married to Sheila, and she's a nurse I met at college, and she works at the University of Iowa Hospitals too, and she works mostly in a research area, and she generally coordinates studies that have to do with endocrinology, which the big thing is diabetes. So she works part-time, and which has been helpful because somebody gets to go home early enough to make sure the kids don't hurt each other after they get out of school. So I have one daughter who is at the University of Iowa. She's a freshman this year, and she thinks that she wants to be a neurologist. So she's taking a lot of pre-med classes. And then I have my son, who was in Boy Scouts that I spent a lot of time with. He's a junior at Clear Creek, Amana. And then my youngest one is a freshman at Clear Creek, Amana as well. So I'm from Independence, so I'm not horribly far away. Mom and Dad live there. My brother lives he moved to Pennsylvania. My sister lives in North Liberty, down by the rec center, and then my other sister lives in Muscatine. And then Sheila's mom and dad live in Fort Dodge. Actually, the one really weird thing that kids did is one day, my wife and I would work days in and evening shifts so that we could rotate who was, to cut down daycare. And you may be a little sleepy, and you'd fall asleep on the couch, and the kids, if they're quiet, could do things and stuff. So I know one day they proudly were telling me that they had made a cake. But they had got flour and eggs and sugar and mashed it all together on the floor, on the carpet in the basement. So couldn't bake it, but sure made a big mess. And at least they had basic ingredients right. So you had to give them credit for that. So. It's kind of an interesting thing that when I was growing up, we would just go all over the place. Have bike, we'll travel, and I was all over town. And we were off in little fields and the woods because we had bike trails through the woods and stuff. And periodically you would show up to make sure that you were still alive, but it was somewhat different world back then. So I think that's kind of so it's a much more small town feel. And when I was growing up, actually, Independence was probably 3 times the size of North Liberty was when I moved here. So, but you never really had second thoughts about just driving all over your bike all over town and stuff. So. I think I have short-term goals, which is to get my kids through college. And then I think I'm going to be able to relax a little bit. So I like my job. I like to teach a lot, and the one thing that I have lost with the job that I have now is I used to have a lot of nursing students, as they're in their final, last semester, and I actually like teaching them quite a bit, and a lot of them are still at the university and working our ICUs, several of them do, and I like. It's nice to see that you've worked with somebody and they've really gone on to succeed. So I think probably what I do eventually is go back to see about teaching or something. So I don't have lots of favorite anythings because there's favorite in categories and stuff. So I know my favorite Star Trek book, which I used to read every one of them, was it's called Federation. And it was kind of a book about kind of the beginning of the Federation of Planets and warp drive and all sorts of things. And it was really quite well done. I really liked that. So favorite food, If I was going to do dessert, then I'd probably say my mom's Western chocolate cake. My favorite food, like if I have to cook it myself, is probably spaghetti because that's easy enough to do. So I like steak quite a bit, although that's not particularly good for you. And then Mountain Dew is a separate category all to itself. Favorite movie would probably be, in the comedy realm of things, The Blues Brothers. So I'll watch that over and over and over again. Well, there's The Blues Brothers, and then there was the movie, and then they had The Blues Brothers 2000. It was not the way it was originally envisioned, but it ended up being pretty good. And the premise in it was kind of funny and stuff. And I have the soundtracks, and we play them all the time. My favorite serious movie would probably be like Apollo 13. So I really enjoyed that movie, and I knew how it ended before I even started it. And I'll sit and watch it, and still keep going over it. And then I kind of like John Wayne movies too. Oh, school, I'd probably be more of a science person. So we did a lot of biology and chemistry and physics and things like that. So. Well, I have a DVR, so I tape a lot of TV shows. So I'm currently up to 80 or 90 hours of stuff that I've not watched yet. So that's just because by the time I get home and you kind of fall asleep kind of watching something. But I like to watch the History Channel and the Discovery Channel. So I will watch Mythbusters, and then I'll watch pretty much anything on the History Channel. So. Automobile, because I drive. So I don't really fly, and a train, well, can't drive that either. So. I know that I did convince one of the kids that was an Olympic sport last couple of years ago. But I would probably be more of the rock person, just because in most cases you can definitively deal with most things. So if I was going to stay there, yes. If I was going to stay on a desert island, the first thing I'd take is my backpack, because it has my survival bag in it. And there's a lot of stuff in there that would be very helpful. And then I'd probably take, given a choice, I'd probably take like a couple years worth of some food, because that would make things much easier. And then I'd probably like one of those satellite radios to call for help to get unexiled from the desert island. I had one experience once when I was living in Cedar Rapids, where I felt fine when I went to bed. Then I woke up in the morning, I didn't feel very good. So I figured I had the flu, because I worked in the hospital and there was a lot of flu going around. So if somebody was banging on the door, and I said, well, I don't particularly feel like going to answer the door because there's lots of people selling stuff and they're not supposed to be there. And if you work evenings, I'd sleep in and stuff. But they kept getting pretty insistent, banging on the door. So I went in, finally got up and started going towards the door and just didn't feel really well. And the door burst open. And it was the fire department. And what had happened was they'd had a carbon monoxide leak in our apartment building, so we were pretty sick from that. So I spent all day in the hospital. And I've been in a car accident where I got T-boned by somebody, but that's about the worst I've been. Oh, at work I can't live without my Mountain Dew in the morning. That's kind of what gets me going. I can leave that there at my desk and go get a drink and come back and keep going. Oh, at home, I think the thing that makes you want to go home is your family's there on and off. Even if they're there for parts of the time, they're in and out and stuff, and it kind of gives you a little anchor. Aside from the Boy Scout Be Prepared, which would be kind of similar one, so I was told to me that Abraham Lincoln said this, that die whenever I may. I'd always like it to be said of me that I pulled a weed and planted a flower where I thought a flower would grow. so that in one small way I've made the world a better place.
Is there something that you want North Liberty and North Liberty residents to know about you?
I think that I would like North Liberty residents to know that I've been here quite a while. I hope that I have a basic understanding of what's going on. I think that I do. I think that I want them to know that I will work very hard to make sure that the city keeps moving forward and grows in a responsible fashion. But we also work to improve the quality of life for our residents. Including if we need more library, better trails, and more parks and things.